So that security is what there?
The security is extremely tight. Each time that we enter the base, we are thoroughly searched. Bomb-sniffing dogs check our equipment, they check our bags, they check our computers, they check everything. Again, this was not an explosion on the compound itself, but farther away, outside the perimeter of the compound, the explosion occurred. So there is no security in those areas out there. Again, whether it was an accident, a construction accident, or a deliberate act, we simply do not know. It's too early to tell, but it was indeed a large explosion that I could see about maybe 400 or 500 yards away from the front entrance to the base.
Yeah, Tom, your job there for CNN is to follow and track the movements of Tommy Franks and the briefings that we're getting from CENTCOM. The first one really came out yesterday since this conflict began on Wednesday night. Do you stay on the base, and if not, are you in town enough to give us an idea about downtown Doha, the population there, any threats in the past that may have been directed toward U.S. or British forces?
Well, I do come and go from the base on occasion, not on a regular basis, but I have not seen anything which is out of the ordinary. They have stores and shops that are open. The hotels are filled with journalists. There doesn't seem to be any opposition to the coalition presence here. It seems like a very normal place. This explosion that occurred now about 7 or 8 minutes ago, it could have been an accident. We don't know. It could have been a construction site where they were using dynamite, or it could have been something with hostile intent. Indeed, the security around this area is tight, and it was even tightened as the campaign began in Iraq. They moved police posts in, Air Force security from the Kuwaiti military, or Qatari military. They set up outposts maybe a half mile away from the entrance. Security was definitely beefed up in the last 72 hours. So just what this incident was, we're still not sure, but I saw it with my own eyes go up maybe 500-600 feet in the air with a large plume of smoke. It was a very loud explosion. You could feel the concussion all the way on the center of the base where I'm located.
Tom, I want to cut you free in a minute here. One more question though for you. We have found in the past that some of these Persian Gulf states, despite the fact that they have a U.S. military presence in their country, they try and keep that information away from their own people, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. The Qataris, do they know about the U.S. presence in their country?
Oh, absolutely. Qatari television is here. They have been broadcasting live. I think they took Tommy Franks' briefing live yesterday. So the local nationals are well aware of the military presence here. Qatari TV is part of this operation behind me here, filing regular reports, hourly from the press center. So the locals here in the country are fully aware of what is going on here. They may not be able to come and visit the base, but local television has been broadcasting from this site just maybe 20-30 feet from where I'm standing right now.
All right, Tom. Tom Antier again in Doha, Qatar. We'll let you go and see if we can track down and find out for us based on this explosion that Tom heard a short time ago and saw himself just outside the base there with Central Command. The forward position for the U.S. military has been stationed and set up for this war with Iraq. Meanwhile, let's move to a different part of the Persian Gulf area. Yesterday, Christiane Amanpour was in southeastern Iraq. She is traveling with the British military. Since that time, she's come back south into Kuwait, and let's check in now for an update as to what's happening there today. Christiane, hello. Good afternoon.
Bill, hello to you. We are, in fact, traveling with the British in and out of various areas, and we are sort of seeing a big picture of what's going on in the southern Iraqi area. Yesterday, we were in Qasr, and we've been reporting, you have for a long time this morning, about those last pockets of resistance. And even though they had the main port yesterday, they were still, as they told us when we were there, and as you've seen today, trying to wipe out those last pockets of resistance. Qasr is a little bit of a litmus test, of course, because that is going to tell how the rest of this area might go, particularly the urban areas. They're still worried about potentially going to Basra because they don't know how they're going to be welcomed and whether there are any Iraqi military in there. What we're being told by briefers here is that many of the Iraqi army units that were outside Basra have, quote, melted away or surrendered, but there may be a situation where they have moved into the town of Basra. That is not clear yet. Today we were inside Iraq in the southern area at the Rumaila oil fields. That also important strategically, as is most of this southern area, for economic and financial strategic reasons. The Rumaila oil field...
Air Force Major General Daniel Leaf. brief prepared statement to give you an overview, and then go on and take your questions for approximately 30 minutes total. I'm United States Air Force Major General Dan Leaf, and I'm serving as the Air Component Coordination Element Director. In that role, I am the Air Component Commander's representative to Lieutenant General David McKiernan, the Coalition Forces Land Component Commander. My purpose in today's briefing is to discuss the role that Coalition Air Component is playing in Operation Iraqi Freedom. I will briefly describe the missions we're performing and the support we're providing to General Franks and the other components, and then, as I said, we'll open the floor for questions. As I speak, we're operating approximately 1,600 aircraft across the coalition. They include everything from long-range bombers to fighters, tankers, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance platforms, and intra- and inter-theater airlift aircraft. These aircraft are operating from as far away as Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, a 35-hour round trip, and air bases in the United Kingdom and Indian Ocean, both a 16-hour round trip from Iraq. All those bases in addition to more than 30 bases in a dozen countries throughout this region of the world, plus 5 aircraft carriers. The Combined Forces Air Component Commander also uses 50 Department of Defense satellites to provide continuous, precise, and essential weather forecasting, communications, navigation, surveillance, and missile warning for all coalition forces in the region. Under the command of United States Air Force Lieutenant General Buzz Mosley, the Coalition Forces Air Component Commander, the coalition's shock air forces, as General Franks described them yesterday, have been striking Iraqi integrated air defense system targets, command and control targets, regime leadership and security targets, weapons of mass destruction targets in and around Baghdad for the last 48 hours. In addition, since combat operations began less than 96 hours ago, air component forces have been striking targets to enable land and maritime operations, performing close air support and interdiction in coordination with our ground force movements, providing command and control and battlefield situation awareness for all the components, supporting special operating forces movements, suppressing enemy air defenses, performing air refueling, suppressing the theater ballistic missile threat, and standing by to perform combat search and rescue if needed. Finally, and importantly, we hope to deliver humanitarian relief and assistance to the Iraqi people very soon. And we have nearly 120 tactical airlift aircraft to help us do exactly that. The air piece of Operation Iraqi Freedom is a critical component of General Franks' overall theater campaign. It's agile, flexible, and responsive, able to strike pre-planned targets and emerging threats with equal ability and devastating effect. The keys to this capability are enhanced command and control, improved precision munitions, months of planning, training, what-ifing and wargaming, and highly skilled and dedicated people who perform their assigned duties, and many more, with pride and precision. As General Frank said yesterday, great care goes into the selection of every target we hit. We're absolutely deliberate, disciplined, and proportional in every targeting decision because we are so intent on minimizing collateral damage and unintended consequences. Every targeting decision is reviewed by many people at several levels to ensure that we have done everything possible to avoid collateral damage. Over the course of the first almost 4 days of combat operations, we've flown a total of 6,000 sorties, including nearly 2,000 on a day alone. It has been dangerous, hard work. The enemy has fired a great deal of anti-aircraft artillery and many surface-to-air missiles at coalition aircraft. We're very proud of the work of these magnificent airmen, as General Franks labeled them, have been doing. And I'm personally proud to be serving with these dedicated and professional airmen, as well as all the fine soldiers, sailors, and Marines of our coalition. We also take pride in how we've been able to orchestrate all this air and space capability to support General Franks. We're operating with one airspace plan, a common air tasking order, providing a single set of command and control, controlled by the Combined Forces Air Component Commander through the single Combined Air Operations Center, by a coalition team of airmen from all U.S. Armed Services and several coalition partners. We're employing 1,600 of our aircraft from all the armed services and several partners as well. And it doesn't matter to us where they were launched from or what flag they flew under or what munitions they carried, only that they create the precise effects desired at the precise locations and times required as many times as needed to support General Franks. We'll continue doing that until Saddam Hussein and his regime are removed from power. If I were to describe the role of coalition air power in a simple analogy, I would use two hands, one balled into a fist and the other completely wide open and extended. The fist illustrates that we are ready, willing, and able to defend the interests of our coalition and disarm the Iraqi regime. The open hand is a hand of hope, freely extended, to show our commitment to rapidly airlift food, medicine, and other humanitarian aid to the suffering people of Iraq. Thank you. I'll take your questions.
General, you mentioned just now the single set of command and control coordinating all this. Today we've had this apparent accident between an American Patriot missile battery and a British tornado jet. How could something like this conceivably happen with this very coordinated command and control and communications?
Well, I won't talk to that specific incident report because the details aren't clear yet. First of all, I have to start by saying that combat, air, land, sea combat, is a very risky business. It's very dangerous. The command and control that we provide and the construct that we operate under, rules of engagement, special instructions that are reviewed daily, are designed to make it as risk-free as possible. It will never be perfect. And every time we have an incident that indicates we may have some adjustment to make to prevent whether it's collateral damage or friendly fire, we put just total effort into doing exactly that. And if it turns out to be the case, I'm certain that we'll find some adjustments that are to be made.
So it's conceivable that there could have been some miscommunication here, even though you have this...
Certainly, it is conceivable. Fog of war, the risk and pace of our operations, as I said, it remains very dangerous business. We do everything we can to minimize the risk. We will never completely eliminate it.
General, could you clarify whether coalition aircraft are overflying Turkish airspace or operating from their bases inside Turkey?
I can't address that right now. Thank you. Back.
Sky News, are you aware of the discovery of any weapons of mass destruction in Iraq?
Not at this time, and I'd allude to General Frank's statement yesterday on that matter. There's a great deal to do yet ahead of us. We've accomplished a lot. The land forces have moved faster, I think, than any army in history, but there's a lot ahead of us. I believe that work is yet to be done, and I believe they will be discovered.
General, the military has attorneys in theater to help them comply with Geneva Convention rules and targeting decisions. Who has ultimate authority over targeting decisions? Are there targets you would have otherwise liked to hit but have been obstructed from hitting by tactics of the Iraqis? And do you have all the information you need to make these targeting decisions?
That's a great, very complex question. I'll try to get to the meat of it quickly. It's a command responsibility to decide what targets are hit. Obviously, in the United States military, we have civilian control and review over military decisions. We have a robust structure and a great deal of information that's been prepared not just since operations began, but well in advance to facilitate good decisions in that regard. And we go through our targeting methodology and our targets that we can and cannot strike on a daily basis. That doesn't mean the enemy won't use it to his advantage, use our attempt to be proportional and proper to his advantage. That's reality. We do everything we can to get it right. It is a collaborative process. You cited the role of judge advocate general personnel in the process, operators, intelligence people, and frankly some automated processes to predict the effects of weapons. And it is a robust process, and I think it has allowed us to be very responsive to changing situations, hit targets as they become valid or remove them from target lists when they're no longer valid, and still provide a great deal of pressure on Saddam Hussein and his regime without applying that pressure unnecessarily to the Iraqi people or the infrastructure.
General.
Let me move around the room a little. Sir.
Do you have any damage assessments yet of any civilian casualties in Baghdad or elsewhere, and collateral damage?
I've heard some open source reports. I have seen no assessments or data that I would label as clear, concise, and concrete on casualties, on civilian casualties. I've only heard the open press reports.
General, can you elaborate on the new ammunition that has been used by the Air Force in the attacks against Iraq?
Well, we've used a variety of munitions that have been modified, upgraded, developed, and I think that's a big part of our ability to put so much pressure on the Hussein regime so rapidly without, again, unnecessarily affecting the Iraqi populace. Some of these munitions have been around since Operation Allied Force in Serbia, like the Joint Direct Attack munition. It's really refinement of the precise and responsive application of those munitions and how many platforms can carry them more than any specific brand new weapon. Our bombers, for example, as we saw in Operation Enduring Freedom, now carry JDAM. Most of the fighters carry that Joint Direct Attack munition. So it's a proliferation of precision more than a development of new weapons.
But are you using like
with
Daisy
this
cutter?
resistance in different places in Iraq, do you think that the Operation Iraqi Freedom is going as you planned, as you expected?
I think it's going more rapidly than I expected. There is resistance. That's quite predictable. It's combat. But if we were to compare the progress from the beaches of Normandy towards Nazi Germany in World War II to the progress made from a starting stop in a known location into Iraq, I'd say we're making very, very rapid progress.
Major, we've heard reports that Saddam Hussein built a $150 million bunker with tons of steel and concrete deep in the ground. From the information you've obtained, and you spoke about the precision that's used, did you penetrate that bunker yet? What information can you tell us about that?
I don't have specific bomb damage assessment on the exact effects, and clearly I couldn't answer a question with information that might help the regime continue to survive if they are. We targeted a number of leadership targets and command and control facilities.
General,
Could you give us a little update, if you could, on Basra? We've heard a lot from the land forces people about what their strategy is for the city. We've heard reports of bombing in the city. Could you tell us a little bit about the campaign around Basra?
I can't update you on the current specific status of that campaign. I can tell you that the coalition aircraft have been an important part of the effort in that zone of advance, and they've been progressing, but I cannot give you a specific operational update.
Role there to shock the leadership?
General, just following up on the question on weapons of mass destruction, have you or any of the forces, the U.S. forces or coalition forces, discovered any Scud launchers or Scud missiles over the last several days?
If you cite Scud launchers as the specific Scud-type missile, not that I'm aware of. We have seen several surface-to-surface missile launchers, and it isn't clear exactly what type, and that's something that we'll probably discover as we move forward into Iraq. But we've seen numerous surface missile launchers in several regions of Iraq. We've located them, executed time-sensitive targeting operations on, and in several cases on them, and in several cases we've destroyed those launchers.
We heard quite a bit of publicity about the Super Hornet and BFA 115 out of Lemoore and the introduction of this new fighter. What is the initial assessment of their performance, and what have they been doing over the last 4 months?
Well, they've been an important part of the team. You know, it's an air component that includes a number of different types of aircraft. They've all been performing well. I don't think that's as important as how well the Marine pilots, the Naval aviators, the RAF, the Air Force aviators, Army aviators have been performing. But I think they've all been performing well. In the back, please.
If you are liberating the people of Iraq and they're ruled by fear, then why are you meeting so much resistance?
That's another fine question. They are ruled by fear. The fear doesn't evaporate instantly. It's a terrorizing administration, a regime that is ruled at gunpoint in many cases and through other nefarious means. That doesn't just evaporate when we advance into Iraq. It will take a while to establish conditions for some sort of normal existence for the Iraqi people. And the resistance is in fact driven in some cases, I believe, by more terror and fear.
Sir.
General, you spoke about dehumanitarian airlift. Is that a new plan that's been forced by the delays at the port of Qatar?
Absolutely not. And again, I think we're advancing more rapidly than almost anyone could have expected. It's always been a part of the planning as long as I've been involved with the effort to ensure that our humanitarian response was ready to match the military effort.
As you advance rapidly, though, you pass some of these towns without making them stabilize, say, for conditions that are conducive to getting humanitarian aid in. How does that affect the plan to get that aid in quickly?
Well, that will take a careful risk assessment. We'll have to see what the circumstances are as we advance, how much resistance is there, and how persistent it is. We're not long into this effort, and the initial resistance may last for some time, or it may melt away very rapidly. We'll have to ensure that we have a proper environment for humanitarian assistance. I believe we can establish that quickly when needed. Sir.
You said lessons will be learned if you can. Are there any changes immediately to operations following the incident with the British aircraft? And also, is there any reason why British aircraft would be more at risk of this type of incident?
Again, I'm not going to speak to the specifics of that incident, that possible incident, except to say it'll be thoroughly reviewed. And if there is a reason to make changes, we will make changes. And the coalition partners are all under a single construct: airspace management, identification, friend or foe, the same air tasking order. So there should be no reason for one type of aircraft, one nation's aircraft, to be at more or less risk. Sir.
Can you tell us how that review is taking place and when we can expect to hear? Because presumably it's a matter of some urgency, because if there's some systems failure that has led to this, you need to sort it out quickly.
It will be sorted out quite quickly, and I cannot give you the specifics because I do not know them.
Can you tell us whether the airmen survived?
General Freelancer, I would like to ask you a question concerning one of those Scud missiles that went down close to Camp Doha on Friday early afternoon. German embassy experts have been out there on the site, and afterwards the German MOD described that as an anti-terror operation. How do you regard this missile as being fired by the Iraqi armed forces or by terrorists?
That's a difficult distinction to make between Saddam's armed forces and terrorists. I think it was fired by military units of the Iraqi armed forces, and I'm not sure it's an important distinction either.
Well, they meant it is.
Yeah.
So we have seen
Seth Doan, Channel 1. As the campaign kind of progresses here, do we, and there have been no evidence of chemical weapons use, has the military's kind of threat assessment changed or lessened to any degree?
As we prepared to conduct combat operations, there was a very detailed assessment of when Saddam Hussein might employ weapons of mass destruction, including chemical weapons. There were various schools of thought of what might trigger early or late in a conflict. Those continue to be reviewed, and we're not putting so much time into a prediction of when he might make a decision to employ it as a negation and a prevention of the employment of weapons of mass destruction or chemical weapons. I don't think we're willing to presume that at all.
General, you say that the enemy has fired a great deal of anti-aircraft missiles. Is that heavily, does it appear that the air defences are most heavily concentrated in Baghdad, or are you seeing these missiles being fired at other cities?
During Desert Storm, the integrated air defense system of the Iraqis was fairly well distributed throughout the country. In the ensuing years, he has drawn them in to the area from Baghdad to Tikrit. So that's where they are concentrated, especially the missile systems. But at certain locations throughout the country, we have seen fairly heavy concentrations of anti-aircraft artillery. The surface-to-air missile systems are mostly in the Baghdad to Tikrit region.
General, you indicated that the Iraqis are using anti-aircraft fire and SAMs shooting at the plane. They're not hitting because they're not good at what they do, or because you're good at what you do?
They're not that we have been successful so far. It's very difficult to determine exactly why we have been successful in avoiding anti-aircraft artillery and surface-to-air missiles. I don't think in any way it reflects a lack of capability on the Iraqis' part. They've done some significant modifications of their surface-to-air missiles. They're fairly innovative and ingenious in employing them. We have good tactics, techniques, and procedures, good countermeasures, and fabulous airmen who make it work. How about in the back corner here? I haven't taken anybody back there. Okay, you've got it.
We have seen huge explosions in Baghdad.
Mhm.
Are you using something like daisy cutters or these type of big and destructive bombs?
Most of the weapons that you've seen in Baghdad, I'm not aware of any use of the daisy cutter or the other very large bombs, are of the 2,000-pound class munition, whether it's a joint direct attack munition or that class of cruise missile. Having dropped 500-pound bombs and 2,000-pound bombs in combat, there is a very significant difference. That's a big, powerful bomb. It's only our ability to target it precisely that limits the effects of it. So the explosions you see are representative of very effective, very powerful munitions precisely applied. Sir?
Do you know any examples of Iraqi using aircraft against you?
We're not aware of any Iraqi flight operations at this time, and we'd like to keep it that way.
General, is there any evidence of the Iraqis borrowing from the tactics of Serbia to set up decoys or other methods of us wasting bombs on targets that aren't real?
We had indications that there'd be some employment of decoys. Given the weight of effort that we are putting on the Iraqi regime and his military forces, I do not feel that will be a successful endeavor, just as it wasn't in the long run in Serbia. Sir?
Excuse me, I have two questions. First, regarding have the Allied forces used any untraditional weapons? Second, to what degree have you succeeded in dismantling the Republican army around Baghdad?
The weapons we've used are all of our, a full complement of our capabilities and nothing I would describe as unconventional. We have very carefully worked to build a synergy of different types of weapons and platforms, but it's an air campaign that is built around our basic capabilities applied very well. As for the Republican Guard, that has been the focus of some of our most recent attacks, certain units, and it will take a while to determine the exact effect, but I'm certain that effect will be very significant. Sir?
And on what level there is a cooperation between you and the Peninsula troops, which is belong to GCC?
We work very hard to cooperate fully in every regard with our hosts and other members of the coalition, regardless of the level of their involvement. And I think I have time for about two more questions.
Do you have a timeline on humanitarian aid when you expect to, now that the area seems to be securing this afternoon?
When needed, as soon as possible. That's the timeline. We would like to get humanitarian aid to the Iraqi people where it's needed, when it's needed, as soon as we can. One more question.
General, this morning there was a firefight going on between coalition forces in Al-Qaeda. Some heavy fire coming from Iraqis hold down in some bunker there. And it was some time before carriers arrived on the scene to offer air assistance. Can you explain why it took so long to offer air assistance?
Well,
it was clear that coalition forces were under heavy fire.
I'm not certain how long it took. I'm not aware of the specific incident. Every moment while you're being fired upon is a lifetime. But we have a structure, and in that case, in that zone, under the MEF, the Marine Expeditionary Force, that gets the resources there as quickly as possible. And I think that would lead me up to a good closing point. This has been a very, as you all demonstrate, very much covered broadcast combat operation, war. You might get the impression that you see it all, or can see it all, on TV. I don't think the limited view that you get from a camera in Baghdad, or even with our great maneuver units down in the field, really delivers anywhere near a complete picture of the breadth, depth, scope of our ongoing military operations. So while that very intense firefight is important, and we want to get resources to the ground troops as quickly as possible, there's a lot of work out there. And we've got to balance our priorities and respond at the right place and the right time when we can. Thank you for your attention.
All right, you have been listening to Air Force Major General Daniel Leaf pointing out just at the end of that press conference that the viewers at home who have been watching our coverage and all the coverage, whether it be in Baghdad or Qasr, are just getting a very limited view of all the work, as he said. He said there is a lot of work being done and to be done in the Iraq theater. With that in mind, we want to show you a live picture that we have from Baghdad at this hour. You see some of those fires on the right-hand side, the black smoke, a little bit more dissipated perhaps than we have seen in the past, but some smoke over Baghdad at this hour, 2:37 p.m. in Baghdad, 6:37 a.m. here on the east coast of the United States. We're going to get a check as we look at that picture in Baghdad. We're going to just get you up to date at this hour of all that's been happening. After a quick airstrike, coalition forces mopped up a pocket of resistance in the port city of Qasr. A small skirmish, but powerful nonetheless. The battle had unfolded over several hours on live TV. The U.S. Army's 7th Cavalry is facing its own battle with Iraqi forces in south-central Iraq. The U.S. force met the resistance while rolling toward Baghdad. You are looking at some pictures via video phone from Walt Rogers, who has been traveling with the 7th Cavalry for days now. They have taken 3 Iraqi prisoners so far that we know about. Those prisoners driving a pink pickup truck with machine gun mounted on the back. Kind of surreal scene. The truck had an NYPD, a New York Police Department sticker on it. Strange things you see in a combat zone. A U.S. Patriot missile may have shot down a Royal Air Force aircraft near the Kuwaiti border. You're looking at a graphic of the Patriot. That, of course, is according to U.S. and British military officials. They say the British plane and the crew are missing. They were returning from a mission in Iraq. Bob Franken had reported there are some search and rescue operations that have gone on. No further information at this time. U.S. military officials confirmed that a member of the 101st Airborne Division has been killed in Kuwait and 12 others wounded. At least 2 grenades were tossed into their tents at Camp Pennsylvania. Now, a fellow soldier, and you are seeing the man believed to be the person who has done this, we say believed. A fellow soldier is being detained as a suspect. He is reportedly a sergeant with an engineering unit attached to the division. Slight wound there, it appears, either on his back, arm, or leg. Iranian officials now say a missile that landed in northwest Iran was probably fired by Iraqi forces. That report from Reuters quotes the Iranian news agency. Now, Iran initially said, you may remember, that a U.S. warplane fired 3 rockets into the region. They're no longer saying that. Those are the headlines making news this hour. You're watching CNN. Now let's go back to our regular coverage of war in Iraq.
All right, 6:39 Eastern Time. We want to go directly to Qatar, to Doha, Qatar, where Tom Mantier is standing by. There was some sort of large explosion near CENTCOM Command headquarters. What more can you tell us about that, Tom?
Carol, about 30 minutes ago, I was standing at the front door of the media center, and I could see the explosion. It was a huge explosion that brought dust and dirt about 600 or 700 yards in the sky and about 100 yards across. It was huge. Immediately, the American military and Qatari police were dispatched to the scene. It was not here on the base, but it was far away, about a quarter to a half mile away. Indications are now that it was an industrial accident that caused this explosion. There is a car crushing plant there. And initial indications are that when they were crushing one car that had fuel in it, that it exploded and caused this explosion. No word yet if there were any injuries, but it was not apparently a terrorist act. And they are saying that this